never really mattered in my family. That's the truth I had to swallow from the moment I was old enough to understand favoritism. No, that word isn't strong enough. Worship. That's what my parents did to my younger brother Daniel. The first, on the other hand, was more of an afterthought. It wasn't always this way. When I was a kid before Daniel was born, things were different. My parents weren't overly affectionate, but they were present. My dad, Robert, used to take me to the park on Sundays, pushing me on the swings and telling me I could be anything I wanted. My mom, Linda, would help me with school projects, even if she sighed heavily after every glue spill or misplaced cut. Then Daniel arrived. I was 3 years old, and overnight, my life changed. My parents became obsessed with my baby brother, doting over every coo and giggle like he was the second coming. He was a miracle baby, at least according to my mom. She had trouble conceiving after me, and Daniel was her unexpected blessing. I should have known then that I'd never come first again. Growing up, it wasn't just about favoritism. It was something deeper, something that made me feel like I was merely existing in their world, not really part of it. Daniel got everything handed to him. Every scraped knee, every tantrum, every tiny inconvenience was met with my mom rushing to his side, soothing him like he was the most fragile creature in existence. Meanwhile, if I tripped and fell, "You're fine, Emma. Don't be dramatic." And school? Oh, don't even get me started. I was always the smart one. Straight A's, top of my class, first place ribbons in science fairs, awards stacking up like building blocks. Did they notice? Barely. My dad once called my 4.0 GPA expected, like it was just my duty to be perfect. Meanwhile, when Daniel barely passed a math test, they threw a damn pizza party. I still remember that night. I had just won a regional debate competition, the biggest achievement of my high school years. I came home, eager to tell them, but before I could even open my mouth, my mom shoved a slice of pepperoni pizza at me. "Look, Emma, Daniel passed math. We're so proud of him." That was the moment I stopped trying to impress them. I knew early on that the only way I would ever have a real life was if I got out, far away. So I worked, hard, harder than anyone else. I saved money from part-time jobs, stayed up all night studying for the SATs, and applied to every single scholarship I could find. Then the acceptance letters came in. Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Full rides. Did my parents celebrate? No. Instead, my mom cried. "But, Emma, if you leave, who's going to help Daniel? He still needs you." That was their biggest concern. Not me. Not my future. Just the fact that my leaving would inconvenience Daniel. I ended up choosing the University of Michigan far enough to be free, close enough that they couldn't completely guilt-trip me into staying. On move-in day, guess who drove me to campus? Not my parents. They were too busy helping Daniel prepare for his soccer tryouts. It was my Aunt Susan who dropped me off, giving me an envelope with $500 in cash and a whispered, "Make something of yourself." I did. College was my first taste of freedom. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to play second fiddle to Daniel. I could just be Emma. And I thrived. I studied finance, worked 3 jobs, and spent every spare second learning about real estate investment. Something about it fascinated me, how a single smart deal could turn into millions, how property was power if you knew what you were doing. By senior year, I had already bought my first small rental property, flipping it for a profit before I even graduated. I didn't tell my family. After college, I went to a corporate high-end finance, cutthroat investment firm. The hours were brutal, but I loved it. Every deal, every risk, every win fueled me. By 30, I had already started my own firm, slowly acquiring properties, flipping them, turning them into gold. By 35, I was a multimillionaire. By 38, I had over $15 million in assets, multiple properties across the country, and a thriving real estate investment business. Did my family know? No. I kept it quiet, because I knew exactly how they would react. For years, I played along at family dinners, letting them believe I was just doing okay. They still thought I worked at some small-time firm, scraping by while they lavished praise on Daniel, who, by the way, had failed in 3 different businesses and was currently drowning in debt. Then came Thanksgiving, the night that shattered the illusion. I had left my phone on the kitchen counter. A notification popped up, an account balance alert from one of my investment accounts. Daniel saw it. $15,274,891. He froze. Then his face twisted into something ugly. What the hell is this? I turned, confused. What? You're rich? His voice was rising, getting louder. You have millions? The entire dining room went silent. My mom set down her fork. My dad's face hardened. And then, as if on cue, Daniel exploded. You've been hiding money from us? The second Daniel shouted those words, the entire table froze. You could hear a pin drop. The air in the room changed like static before a storm. I felt the weight of every pair of eyes on me. Mom's face paled, her fork slipping from her hand, clinking against her plate. Dad's lips pressed into a thin line, nostrils flaring. Aunt Susan, the only sane one in the family, slowly sipped her wine, like she already knew this was about to be a disaster. And Daniel? His face was twisted with something ugly, betrayal, anger, and worst of all, entitlement. You're rich? He repeated, voice rising. And you never told us? I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to lie, to downplay it, to brush it off as a misunderstanding just to avoid this exact situation. But I was so damn tired of pretending, tired of making myself small for their comfort, tired of playing the role of the invisible daughter while Daniel was treated like a king. So, for the first time in my life, I told the truth. Yes, I'm wealthy. I built a business. I've been successful. I barely got the words out before my mother gasped, clutching her chest like I had physically stabbed her. Emma, she whispered, how could you keep this from us? I almost laughed. You never asked. That was the truth, wasn't it? They had never cared about my life. They had never cared to ask. The only things that ever mattered were Daniel's problems, Daniel's failures, Daniel's struggles. Mom blinked like I had spoken in a foreign language. But we're family, she choked out. Family shares everything. Dad finally found his voice. We raised you, Emma. We sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay us? There it was, the guilt trip. The absurdity of it all made my blood boil. Sacrificed? The first repeated, laughing dryly. You didn't even come to my college graduation. You didn't help me with tuition. You forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. What exactly did you sacrifice for me? Mom flinched. Dad's jaw clenched. And then Daniel Sweet, golden boy. Daniel had the audacity to slam his fist on the table. I can't believe this, he snarled. I've been struggling for years, and you've been sitting on millions? There it was. The real issue. It wasn't that I had succeeded. It was that he had failed. And now, suddenly, my success was his problem. The demands start mom was crying now, full on. Dramatic soap opera tears. We need help, Emma, she sobbed. Daniel needs help. He's been trying so hard to get his business off the ground. He just needs a little push. $5 million should be enough. I nearly choked. $5 million? Daniel nodded like it was a perfectly reasonable request. I'd pay you back, obviously. I laughed. Actually, I laughed because it was so ridiculous. Daniel, you've run 3 businesses into the ground. You've burned through every loan, every investment, every dollar mom and dad have ever given you. Why would I throw away my money on another one of your failures? That hit a nerve. His face darkened, hands curling into fists. Because I'm your brother. That single sentence told me everything. He really, truly believed that being related to me entitled him to my success. They turn against me. Mom switched tactics, begging. Emma, sweetheart, you don't understand, she pleaded. Daniel is struggling. He has student loans, credit card debt. I cut her off. Not my problem. She blinked, like she genuinely couldn't comprehend the words. But you're rich. I exhaled slowly. And I got rich by working my ass off. I didn't get handed anything. No one helped me. Not you, not Dad, not Daniel. I did this on my own, Daniel scoffed. You're seriously going to hoard all that money while your family suffers? I already send you money, I snapped. That shut him up. I turned to my parents. Did you think the anonymous deposits in your bank account were from some fairy godmother? I've been sending you $7,000 a month. I've covered bills. I've paid for things you never even knew about. And now you're sitting here acting like I owe you more? Dad's face went purple. $7,000 a month? That's nothing compared to what you have. I felt something in me break. Something that had been teetering for years of neglect. Years of dismissal. Years of being treated like I didn't matter. I pushed back my chair and stood. You know what? You're right. Mom's face lit up. Hopeful. You're right, I repeated. 7,000 is nothing, so I'll fix that. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and canceled every single monthly transfer to their account. Mom gasped like I had set the house on fire. Emma, what are you doing? I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I'm done. Dad shot up from his seat. You can't do this, I smiled. Watch me. And with that, I grabbed my coat, my bag, and walked out the door. Behind me, Daniel was still screaming. The second I stepped out of that house, I felt lighter, like I had just cut a dead weight off my back. But I knew this wasn't over. As I drove home, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, calls, voicemails. It was like my family had suddenly remembered I existed, except not as a person, but as a walking ATM they were about to lose access to. I ignored every single message. But then Daniel, being the self-absorbed brat that he is, took it to social media. The first post went up within an hour. Daniel Carter, family should always come first. But some people let money turn them into selfish monsters. Sad to see how greed can destroy relationships. Hashtag betrayed, hashtag disappointed. Oh, he was going for the sympathy angle. The comments rolled in fast. Aunt Nancy, what happened, sweetie? Daniel, just found out my sister has been hiding millions while our family struggled. Cousin Jake, wait, what? Uncle Greg, that's disgusting. Family helps family. What's wrong with people these days? Random high school friend, damn bro. That's cold. And on it went. A full-blown pity party, with Daniel playing the poor, struggling younger brother who just wanted a little help from his evil millionaire sister. I stared at the screen, debating whether to respond. For a second, I wanted to. I wanted to rip apart his bullshit sob story with the truth that I had been secretly sending them money for years, that I had never received an ounce of support from them, that I had built everything on my own, while he wasted every opportunity given to him. But then I stopped myself, because, really? What was the point? They weren't interested in the truth. They just wanted someone to blame for their failures. So I put my phone down, turned off notifications, and let them scream into the void. The next morning, my work phone rang at exactly 8. I picked up without thinking, expecting a client. Emma Carter's office. Silence, then a sniffle. Emma, my mom's voice, weak and trembling, came through the speaker. We need to talk. I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly. There's nothing to talk about, Mom. Honey, please. She sniffled again, like she was on the verge of tears. I know last night got out of hand, but we're family. You can't just turn your back on us. I clenched my jaw. That's funny, because you had no problem turning your back on me for the last 30 years. That's not fair, she whispered. You know we love you. I actually laughed. Love me? Or love my bank account? Silence. Then she dropped the real reason for her call. Your father and I. We're struggling, Emma. The mortgage, Daniel's loans. We just need a little help. And there it was. Right back to money. No apology. No remorse. Just a demand wrapped in guilt. I tightened my grip on the phone. I already helped. I've been helping. And you didn't appreciate a single cent of it. So, no, I'm not giving you more. I'm done. Her voice hardened instantly. The sweet, weepy act disappeared like smoke. You're being incredibly selfish, Emma. Ah, there it was. I smirked. Then I guess one finally learned from the best. And I hung up. I should have known they wouldn't stop at phone calls. Because that afternoon, when I walked into my office, my receptionist, Jenny, looked panicked. Emma, she whispered. They're here. I blinked. Who's here? Before she could answer, I saw them. Sitting in the waiting area, looking completely out of place in my high-end office, were my parents and Daniel. Daniel had his arms crossed, his face a perfect mask of smug entitlement. My mom? Tight-lipped and tense, like she was about to scold a child. And my dad? Silent but seething. I sighed. Did they make an appointment? Jenny swallowed. They said it was a family emergency. I exhaled sharply. Of course they did. I turned toward them, keeping my voice cold. You have 2 minutes. Say what you came to say. Mom stood first, clutching her purse like she was about to deliver a holy decree. We've discussed this as a family, she began, voice calm, measured. And we've decided it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. I stared at her. Excuse me? Daniel leaned forward, grinning like a shark. We were thinking 5 million for me, a couple million for mom and dad. It's not even half of what you have. I actually laughed, out loud. You discussed this without me and decided I should just hand over my money? Daniel shrugged. It's what's fair. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. You know what? You're right. I do owe you something. Their faces lit up. Then I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and pulled up the cancellation screen for the direct deposits I had been sending them every month. Click, click, click. Their accounts? Emptied of my money. My mom gasped like I had slapped her. Emma, what did you just do? I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I'm fixing my mistake. Daniel shot up from his seat. You can't just cut us off. We're family. I met his gaze, unflinching. Then maybe you should have treated me like it. My dad's face went red. This is disgusting. We raised you. We made you who you are. I smiled. No, you didn't. That's the problem. Daniel's face twisted in rage. You're gonna regret this, I laughed. I doubt it. Then I turned to Jenny. Call security. I watched, arms crossed, as security escorted my family out of my office. Daniel was fuming, his face red with rage. This isn't over, Emma, he shouted over his shoulder. You can't do this to us. I didn't even flinch, because yes, I absolutely could. My mom's expression was more calculated. She wasn't done yet. She didn't yell, didn't fight. Instead, she just gave me a long, disappointed look, like she was waiting for me to feel guilty. I didn't. The moment the elevator doors closed behind them, Jenny let out a breath. That was intense. I gave her a small, tired smile. Yeah, but it's done now. Except it wasn't, because less than 24 hours later, I got a call from my lawyer. Jonathan, my attorney, sounded amused when he called. Well, Emma, your family is certainly persistent. I sighed. What now? They've contacted a lawyer. They're considering legal action. I blinked. On what grounds? Financial neglect. Silence. Then I burst out laughing. You're kidding. Wish I was. Jonathan chuckled. Apparently, they're arguing that since you've been supporting them financially, you have a continued obligation to do so. I rolled my eyes. So, let me get this straight. They ignored me my entire life, treated me like an afterthought. But now that they know I have money, they think they're legally entitled to it? That's exactly what they think. Unbelievable. I pinched the bridge of my nose. What's our move? Jonathan's voice turned sharp. They don't have a case, but I'll draft a formal cease and desist letter. If they push it further, we'll hit them with harassment charges. Good, because if they wanted to play dirty, I was ready to play too. Since the legal route didn't go anywhere, Daniel took the next logical step, continuing his pity party online. His Facebook post became increasingly dramatic. Imagine finding out your own sister is a multi-millionaire while you're drowning in debt, and instead of helping, she cuts you off completely. Heartbreaking. The first thought family meant something. I thought blood mattered. Guess I was wrong. It's crazy how money changes people. Some folks get rich and forget where they came from. And of course, the comments flooded in with sympathy. Uncle Greg, she always was selfish, Daniel. You deserve better. Aunt Nancy, we're here for you, honey. You don't need toxic people in your life. Some random high school classmate? Wow. Emma always seems so stuck up. Not surprised she turned into a greedy millionaire. I didn't respond, because I knew exactly what Daniel wanted. He wanted me to break, to come crawling back, desperate to prove I wasn't a villain. Not happening. Instead, I did something better. I sent my own message in the way that mattered most. I made 2 phone calls. The first? To my bank. I need to change my security measures, I told them. Restrict all transfers, block any attempts to access my accounts, and flag any unusual activity related to my family's names, because I wouldn't put it past them to try something shady. The second call? To my real estate team. List the house, I said simply, because if my parents were going to weaponize my childhood home against me, talk about how I owed them everything because I grew up under their roof, then fine. I'd make sure that roof no longer belonged to them. I had legally acquired the deed years ago, after helping them refinance the mortgage because, of course, they were bad with money. Now, I was selling it. If they wanted to act like strangers, I'd treat them like strangers. Strangers don't get free houses. A week later, my mom finally snapped. She showed up at my office again, this time alone. Jenny, bless her, blocked her at the front desk. But my mother was persistent. I just need 5 minutes, she pleaded. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I led her to a small meeting room, sat down across from her, and folded my arms. What do you want? She sighed dramatically, shaking her head. Emma, how did we get here? I raised an eyebrow. You tried to sue me. That's how. She flinched. That was just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I scoffed. You tried to legally force me to give you money. She sighed again. We just need help, honey. That's all. No. She blinked. No? No, I repeated. I'm done. I don't owe you anything. And if you ever harass me again, my lawyer will make sure you regret it. Her face hardened. The sweetness vanished. You think you're so above us now, don't you? She hissed. I met her glare, unbothered. I don't think I'm above you, Mom. I just finally realized my worth. And it has nothing to do with you. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she stood up, adjusting her purse. You'll regret this, she said coldly. One day, you'll be alone, and you'll wish you still had family. I smiled. I already feel freer than I ever have. And with that, I walked out, leaving her sitting there, alone. Exactly how she made me feel for years. The moment I walked out of that meeting room, something inside me clicked. It was over. Not in the dramatic, final showdown kind of way. Not in the way you slam a door and storm off into the sunset. It was quieter than that. More like a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had finally dissolved. I had spent my entire life chasing validation from people who were never going to give it to me. And now, I didn't care anymore. The days after cutting my family off felt strange, but not in the way I expected. I thought I'd feel guilt. Maybe some kind of deep, nagging ache in my chest, like I was abandoning them. But instead, I felt peace. For the first time, my phone wasn't blowing up with manipulative texts. No late-night guilt-tripping calls. No passive-aggressive Facebook posts. Silence. It was beautiful. I could wake up in the morning without feeling dread. I could go to work without bracing myself for another round of demands. I was free. Of course, Daniel wasn't going to let go that easily. 3 weeks later, I got one final email from him. The subject line? Let's be reasonable. I almost deleted it without reading it. But curiosity won. Inside, the message was exactly what I expected. Emma, I know things got heated, but we're still family. I don't want to fight anymore. Look, I get that you're upset, but let's not do something we'll both regret. We should be working together, not against each other. You know I've always had big ambitions. I just need one shot, one real opportunity to prove myself. I'm not asking for a handout, just an investment. I have a solid business plan, and with your support, we can both benefit. It's a win-win. Let's sit down and talk this out like adults. Daniel the first stared at the email for a solid minute before bursting out laughing. I mean, really? After everything? After the screaming, the lawsuit threats, the entitlement? He still thought he could finesse me into funding his next failure. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what he had done. Just another scam wrapped in fake reconciliation. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I blocked his email and let him sit in the silence he deserved. The next major move? Getting rid of the family home. Legally, it had been mine for a while. I had taken over the mortgage years ago, paid it off, and kept quiet about it because I knew if my parents found out, they'd try to use it against me. Now, I was selling it. Not out of revenge, not even out of spite, just because it wasn't my home anymore. I wasn't tied to that place, not the way they wanted me to be. It was just a house, a building, 4 walls that had once held a family. But now, it was just a shell of something I no longer belonged to. So I called my real estate agent, listed it, and within 2 weeks I had multiple offers. When the sale was finalized, I got one last voicemail from my dad. I didn't listen to it, just deleted it. With my family out of the picture, something weird started happening. I started living for myself, not for their approval, not for their expectations, just for me. I traveled more. Went on trips I had been putting off for years because I was too busy dealing with their drama. I started hobbies, not because they were productive or impressive, but because I enjoyed them. I made real connections with people, friends who actually cared about me. Not because of my success, not because of what I could do for them, just because they liked me. And my business? It thrived. Without the constant financial drain of my family, without the distractions, I was able to focus, expand, grow. My company opened new offices. We signed bigger deals. My net worth climbed higher. And for the first time in my life, none of it felt empty. Because now, it was mine. Not something I was desperately trying to use to earn love that was never going to come. Not something I had to hide or downplay to make others comfortable. Just something I had built for myself. And that was more valuable than any number in my bank account. One night, months later, I was sitting in my apartment, glass of wine in hand, music playing, completely at peace when I got a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to check. It was from my grandmother. "Grandma Carter, good for you, Emma. About time someone in this family made something of themselves. Proud of you, kiddo." I smiled. Maybe I had lost my parents. Maybe I had lost Daniel, but I had gained something better. Self-respect, freedom, peace. And that was worth everything. Months passed, then a year, then two. And with every day that went by, I felt lighter. At first, I expected some kind of emotional fallout, some deep grief over losing my family. But instead, I thrived. My business expanded into international markets. My name, Emma Carter, became synonymous with expertise, precision, and excellence in the real estate investment world. I built a life that was truly mine. And not once did I look back with regret. I never reached out to my family again. But through the grapevine, I still heard bits and pieces about them. Daniel? His last business venture flopped just like the others. He tried to start a luxury car rental service, but apparently, he spent more time driving the cars himself than actually renting them out. Debt collectors were after him. My parents? After I sold the house, they downsized, moved to a smaller place in a less expensive neighborhood. It killed my mother to have to leave behind the house she had once planned on using as leverage against me. But in the end, they had no choice. The extended family? Most of them still believed Daniel's sob story that I had abandoned them out of greed. But some had started putting the pieces together. A few distant relatives reached out quietly, privately, to tell me they understood now. That they had seen Daniel's entitlement firsthand. That they regretted taking sides too quickly. I didn't say much in response, because the truth was, I didn't need their validation anymore. For a long time, I had let my past define me. I had let the way my family treated me shape how I saw myself, as someone who had to earn love, as someone who had to prove their worth. But cutting them off, it rewired something in me. I started looking at life differently. I stopped seeking approval, stopped downplaying my success to make other people comfortable, stopped feeling like I owed the world an apology for being ambitious, smart, and damn good at what I did. And for the first time in my life, I started giving back, but on my own terms. One day, while reviewing a new investment deal, I had a thought. What if I used my success to help people who actually deserved it? Not leeches, not entitled parasites who thought they were owed something just for existing, but real, hard-working people who just needed a chance. So, I started a scholarship fund for young women who, like me, had grown up in unsupportive households, who had been overlooked, underestimated, and ignored. The Carter Foundation launched quietly, but within a year, it had already put dozens of students through college. It was my way of rewriting the story, of proving that success didn't have to come from some rigged system of privilege and favoritism. Success could be built from determination, intelligence, and sheer will. And that was a legacy worth leaving behind. 2 years after I cut them off, I got one last letter from my mother. It was handwritten, surprisingly neat, surprisingly restrained. For a moment, I debated throwing it away without reading, but something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe closure, made me open it. Inside, the message was short. "Emma, I hope you're doing well. I don't expect you to respond, but I wanted to say something. We didn't realize what we had in you until you were gone. Maybe we should have. Your father is getting older. Daniel is still Daniel. I'm not writing to ask for money, just to say that I understand, in my own way. I don't know if you'll ever want to speak to us again. But if you do, you know where to find us." Mom, I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly, put it back in the envelope, and tossed it into the fire. Because I had already moved on. I didn't need their closure. I didn't need their too late acknowledgments. I had found peace without them. and I wasn't about to let them back in just because they finally realized what they had lost. Now, when I look at my life, I don't see what I lost. I see what I gained: a thriving business, a home that I built on my own terms, friendships that are real, not transactional, a sense of self-worth that no one can take away, and most importantly, I see a woman who no longer needs anyone's permission to exist, succeed, and be unapologetically herself. I am Emma Carter, and I am finally free.